1824, Virginia. The Harper estate sprawled across the misted valley like a shadow stitched into the earth. That night, the long dining hall smelled of roasted meats, candle wax, and something darker. Something metallic, faint but unmistakable. The candles flickered, casting grotesque shapes across the walls, shadows that seemed to writhe like living creatures. At the head of the table sat the patriarch, Thomas Harper, his eyes hollow, a faint scar tracing his temple, and beside him the matriarch, Eleanor, poised with unnatural grace, her fingers resting on the stem of a wineglass, red as blood. "No, one leaves," Thomas whispered to his eldest son, a boy of 17 with a pale face and trembling hands. "Not until we have the legacy sealed." His words slid over the table like venom, unnoticed by the guests, who were slaves, servants, and a handful of visiting merchants. Yet the servants felt it, a subtle tremor, the chill in the air that warned them something unspeakable was about to unfold. The dinner began with laughter, forced, brittle. The matriarch clinked her glass and spoke in a soft, dangerous cadence. "Tonight, we honor the lineage. Our future is nourished in secrecy." No one questioned it. No one dared. A young boy, barely 13, glanced around and noticed the strange glances, the subtle touches exchanged under the table, the way a family member's hand lingered on another's, in a way that made his stomach turn. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows like a phantom trying to enter. Whispers began to travel through the corridors. The kitchen staff reported a locked pantry filled with human bones, the smell of decay drifting under the doors. Eleanor's diary, left carelessly on a sideboard, contained a single line. "Blood is the seed of faith, and obedience the harvest." The words made the air heavy, tangible, pressing on the lungs of any who dared read them. In the corner of the room, a slave girl clutched her apron, trying to mask the tears that streaked her soot-covered face. Why do they do this?" she whispered to another, who could only shake her head. Their fears were not just of punishment. They were of witnessing acts that had no place in God's world, acts that twisted flesh and blood into instruments of legacy. Thomas rose from his seat. "The feast is complete. Now, the ceremony." No one moved. A priest, summoned from a distant town, stood at the threshold, his hand trembling over the Bible. Eleanor guided a young girl toward the center of the hall. The girl's eyes were wide, reflecting the flickering candlelight. She wore a simple dress, white as innocence, and the patriarch traced a finger across her cheek, whispering, "Your life ensures ours endures." The wind screamed against the windows. Outside, a lone dog howled, and then came the sound that would haunt every surviving witness. A low, guttural chant rising from the cellar below, where it was said the first preparations of the Harper legacy had begun years ago. The guests shifted nervously, yet none dared leave. The patriarch's grin widened, and Eleanor's eyes sparkled with the fervor of devotion and madness. "Would you dare live next to such a family? Tell me below." A muffled thud echoed from the basement. Something, or someone, had moved. The candlelight flickered violently, revealing a shadow of a child, bound and staring from the stairs. Thomas's hand lifted in a slow, deliberate gesture. "Tonight," he said, voice calm, "we secure eternity." The girl whimpered. The whispers of the past seemed to gather, pressing against the walls, and then silence fell. But for how long? 1824, Virginia. The valley outside the Harper estate was alive with murmurs, though no one dared speak them aloud. Villagers whispered behind shutters, in dimly lit kitchens, and along the muddy roads. "Have you heard?" a farmer asked, voice quivering. "The Harper girl. She hasn't been seen in 3 nights. Not a soul has laid eyes on her." His neighbor shivered. "Nor the boy," she replied. "They say screams echo from the manor after sundown." The slaves, too, spoke in hushed tones, afraid that even the walls could listen. A young girl named Ruth described the locked doors and strange lights she glimpsed beneath them. "Sometimes," she said, trembling, "I hear laughter, but it's not human. It's wrong." Her friend clasped her hand, feeling the cold of fear seep into her bones. Asterisk. In the village church, Father Matthews scrawled notes in his sermon journal, the pages smudged with ink and tears. The Harper family walks a path that God would never bless. Whispers of rituals, children bound, and feasts unknown fill the valley. The devil lingers in the halls. The priest folded the page, knowing no one would believe him until the horrors became undeniable. Asterisk. Meanwhile, the Harper estate moved with an eerie, quiet precision. Doors locked at night, servants disappeared for hours, and the distant hum of chanting sometimes rose from below the cellar. Eleanor Harper wrote another line in her diary. "They will never understand the purity of our legacy. Fear is the guardian of truth." Her words carried the same chilling weight as the metallic scent that always clung to her presence. Asterisk. The villagers noticed other signs. Livestock vanished without trace. Children came home screaming about shadows that watched them. One old woman swore she saw a young boy, barely 10, carrying a bundle of strange, blood-soaked rags toward the woods. "God forgive me," she muttered, clutching her rosary. "But the Harper family drinks more than wine in those halls." At night, the estate seemed to breathe. The wind carried the faint, pungent smell of rot and iron. In the kitchen, the Ainkway cook whispered to a newly arrived maid, "Do not go near the pantry, not for food, or anything else. The walls themselves have teeth." Outside, the fog clung to the ground like a living thing, curling around trees and gravestones as if trying to smother the valley in silence. Asterisk. One evening, a visiting merchant tried to leave, but Thomas Harper stopped him. "You will stay," he said, voice low but final. "Witness the devotion, or join the forgotten." The man swallowed, sensing a threat far darker than words. Behind him, the matriarch traced her finger along the ledger of slaves, numbers circled and marked in crimson ink. Each number represented not just lives, but generations, rituals yet to unfold, secrets meant to last for centuries. Asterisk. A muffled scream rose from the estate's cellar. The villagers froze, uncertain if it was a child, a slave, or something else. Rumors would never tell the whole story. Yet some would swear, for decades afterward, that the Harper estate had no walls, only shadows, waiting to swallow the unwary. Asterisk. If this feels dark already, subscribe, because the most forbidden detail is still to come. Asterisk. A gust rattled the window panes, and a faint giggle echoed through the halls. Ruth's eyes widened. Someone, or something, was watching, and deep in the cellar, where the first rituals began, the faint smell of iron promised that the valley's whispers were only the beginning. Asterisk. 1824, Virginia. The Harper estate's library smelled of dust, leather, and the faint copper tang of blood. Eleanor Harper's ledger lay open on a mahogany table, its pages yellowed and brittle. Numbers, names, and dates scrawled in precise crimson ink revealed a meticulously planned horror. 76 slaves, each marked for breeding, rituals, and inheritance. Every entry a life twisted for the family's obsession with legacy. A new servant, Abigail, stumbled upon the ledger while dusting. Her fingers trembled as she traced a name. "Seventh child. Assigned," she whispered, unable to finish the line. The patriarch appeared behind her, his shadow stretching across the room like a spectre. "Curiosity," he said softly, "is the first step toward understanding, or doom." Abigail gasped, dropping the ledger. The thud echoed in the empty room. Asterisk. Outside, the wind howled through the gnarled trees, carrying faint screams from the basement where rituals were prepared. Servants whispered in corners. Locked doors, Strange symbols burned into the walls, and screams that cut through the night. A kitchen maid recalled, "I smelled blood before I ever saw it, iron mixed with meat, and fear." Eleanor's diary added another cryptic line. "Each birth is a covenant. Obedience is the harvest of life." One evening, Thomas Harper summoned his eldest son to the library. "Numbers of faith," he said, fingers brushing the ledger. "You will ensure our legacy as I have ensured yours." The boy's voice was barely audible. "Father, must we—" Thomas's grin widened. Faith has no questions, only results. The room smelled of burning candles and rotting parchment, a combination that left Abigail gagging in the corner. **. Neighbors noticed odd patterns. Families nearby reported missing children, livestock slaughtered in impossible numbers, and lights in the Harper windows long after sundown. Letters intercepted from merchants described unnatural feasts and ceremonies where slaves were chosen for rituals in precise order. One line, smudged in haste, read, "Do not question, they belong to the harvest." A priest, Father Matthews, recorded in his journal, "I glimpsed the ledger myself. The Harper family has catalogued sin with a precision I cannot name. Each name, each number, a life stolen, bent to the service of forbidden devotion." The priest's trembling hand left smudges on the page, his prayers unreadable in the face of such meticulous evil. Eleanor Harper's voice echoed in her diary again, this time reflecting a cruel rationale. "The outside world cannot comprehend devotion. They call it sin. I call it salvation." The servants shivered as they cleaned her chambers, catching glimpses of carved symbols in the wood, crossed lines with crimson stains that refused to be scrubbed away. At night, Abigail heard whispers from the ledger, as if the pages themselves murmured secrets. Footsteps creaked above, laughter echoed down the hall, and somewhere below, chains rattled against stone. The patriarch's words lingered. "Numbers are faith. Numbers are eternity. Numbers are all that remain when flesh is gone." The ledger had revealed everything. And yet, even as Abigail read, a shadow passed over the final page, blotting a name with ink and something darker. The secrecy of the Harper estate was unyielding. And outside, the valley whispered warnings long before anyone would understand the scale of the horrors catalogued within those cursed pages. Would you dare confront such a family? Comment your thoughts. A sudden scream tore through the night. From the cellar, the faint smell of iron and charred wood rose. Someone, or something, had been moved, erased from the ledger, vanished into the darkness. And in that silence, the horror of 76 lives, counted, planned, and claimed, pressed down on the estate like a living thing. *1824, Virginia. Beneath the Harper estate, a labyrinth of stone corridors ran deep into the earth, damp and smelling of mold, iron, and decay. The slaves called it the chamber, whispering about screams, chains, and rituals no one dared speak aloud. A young girl, Miriam, remembered being pushed down one cold stairway, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood. She shivered, recalling the echoing footsteps and whispered chants that seemed to come from the walls themselves. One night, a servant named Samuel found a hidden door behind the pantry. It groaned as he pushed it open, revealing a room lined with shelves of bones, leather restraints, and jars filled with cloudy liquid that smelled faintly of iron. "God forgive me," he muttered, clutching his apron to his face. The patriarch appeared behind him, hands clasped. "Do not be afraid of eternity," Thomas said calmly. "The chamber is merely faith made flesh." Samuel's knees buckled. The room smelled of rot and fear, each inhalation a sickness. Eleanor Harper descended the stairs later that night, candle in hand. "Each one must know their place," she whispered to a trembling boy, guiding him to a corner where faint marks on the stone suggested generations had knelt here before him. Her diary lay open nearby, a line catching Samuel's eye. Obedience sweetens the bitterest harvest. Fear is the soul's seasoning. The words dripped from the page like inked blood, chilling him to the core. Voices from outside pressed against the chamber's walls. Ruth, a young girl still unaware of her own family's horrors, spoke softly to another girl. I hear whispers at night, calling names, counting them. Her friend clutched her arm. Do not listen. They take those who answer. The air felt alive, as though the chamber itself breathed, inhaling the terror of every soul trapped within its stone embrace. Testimonies from decades later described what the chamber had been. A place where 76 slaves were kept, controlled, bred and observed, one survivor recalled. They made us march, take numbers, and pray while they chose, touched, and marked us. I still hear it, even after all these years. Her voice broke, leaving silence in the darkened room, broken only by the wind rattling. Above ground. The patriarch conducted ceremonies in hushed tones, guiding children and adults alike into ritualistic obedience. Candles sputtered, dripping wax onto blood-stained floors. The air reeked of human fear and decay. A servant dared to peek into the main chamber during one such ritual, and found Eleanor standing over a young girl, murmuring, "Legacy demands sacrifice. Fear feeds the soul." The room seemed to pulse with her words. Outside the villagers had begun to speak in rumors about disappearing families and strange lights in the Harper windows. They keep the chamber, one whispered, and we can never see it. They live there with ghosts, and we are fools for thinking God watches. The chamber's horror grew with each passing night, leaving shadows on the walls, chains on the floor, and whispers that would follow anyone who dared enter. If this feels unbearable, remember, the next secret is far darker. From deep within, the stone corridors, a faint sound rose, screams, laughter, and the unmistakable clatter of shackles. Samuel pressed his ear to the wall, knowing one wrong move could seal his fate. The Harper family's ghosts, some living, some dead, haunted the chamber still, and no one outside would ever truly understand the magnitude of what lay beneath. 1824, Virginia. The Harper estate's halls smelled of candle wax, sweat, and something darker, something unspoken. Eleanor Harper guided a young girl and her brother to a hidden chamber, their small hands trembling as they were forced into positions dictated by the family's rituals. Blood unites us, she whispered, tracing a finger along their wrists. Obedience preserves the legacy. The children's eyes widened in terror, the metallic scent of iron filling their nostrils. Outside the walls, slaves whispered in corners, sharing fragmented stories of ceremonies where family members married in secret. Rituals involving forbidden bonds and unnatural unions. One older woman, Mara, recalled, I watched them, hidden behind the drapes. They claimed it was devotion, but it felt wrong, so wrong. Her voice shook, lips pale. She clutched her apron, smelling faintly of rot and fear. The patriarchs. Ledger listed each participant meticulously. Names, dates, rituals, and punishments. Every number represented lives bound in secrecy, manipulated for generations. Numbers of faith, Thomas said to his son, tracing the lines in red ink. Without them, we are nothing. The boy's hands shook, trying to reconcile blood with devotion. Eleanor's diary added, the outside world cannot judge what God has sanctioned in the shadows. One evening, a young slave boy, Samuel, was forced to witness a ritual designed to cement the Harper family's lineage. Chains rattled as the patriarch guided participants through vows whispered under candlelight. The air reeked of iron and sweat. Do not resist, Thomas hissed. This is your salvation. The children's eyes darted between each other, and Samuel tasted bile in his mouth as the weight of the act pressed down on his chest. **. The villagers' suspicions grew. A merchant passing the estate noticed a young girl walking hand in hand with her father in the dead of night. It's unnatural, he told another. I saw their fingers entwined, their eyes, too close. I cannot describe it, but God does not bless such things. Rumors spread like wildfire. Yet when anyone approached the estate, the Harper family's authority and fear kept them silent. Even within the walls, tension simmered. Slaves reported chains in corners where no one had been, doors that locked on their own, and whispering walls. The chambers speak, one servant murmured. They remember every touch, every act, every ritual, a diary fragment, charred at the edges, detailed vows exchanged between siblings, each word twisted into devotion and madness. Blood binds what the world cannot see. Love is obedience, and obedience is eternal. The forbidden bonds extended beyond the family. Slaves were forced to participate in the rituals, bearing children for purposes that none could name aloud. Eleanor rationalized it as divine necessity, murmuring, "Each child is a promise, each act a covenant. Fear preserves faith, fear preserves order." Servants recoiled at the smell of iron, sweat, and wax, each ritual leaving a mark, on flesh, on soul, and in memory. If this feels unbearable, remember, the full horror is still waiting to unfold. At night, the estate seemed alive. Shadows moved against the walls like writhing bodies. A muffled sob rose from the basement, mingling with a distant, eerie chant. Outside, the wind carried whispers of forbidden unions, the sound of chains, and a scent of decay that lingered, long after the candle flames were extinguished. The Harper family's legacy of control, obsession, and taboo pressed into every corner, every shadow, every heartbeat. *1824, Virginia. News of the Harper estate's horrors crept slowly through. The county carried in whispers, letters, and fleeting glances. Newspapers reported strange disappearances, livestock mutilations, and fevers that claimed children, but no one could connect the dots. The Harper family wielded influence, silencing questions and masking ritual horrors with polite hospitality. The wind carried the faint scent of iron from the estate, unnoticed by those too fearful to investigate. Father Matthew's journal chronicled his frustration. I sent letters to authorities. I warned them of chains, rituals, and unnatural unions. The law ignores what it fears or cannot prove. God may see, but men turn away. His inked hands shook as he described the ledger, the children, and the ceremonies that stained both soul and body. The church offered no protection. Sermons spoke of obedience and divine providence, failing to acknowledge the abuse lurking in plain sight. Merchants who had visited the estate whispered of iron-scented rooms, chains, and rooms locked from both, outside and within. One letter, smudged and partially burned, read, I cannot leave. If I do, they will take me as they have the others. This estate, it is a tomb of souls. The writer's fear was palpable, the sense of entrapment seeping through every carefully chosen word. Neighbors, though uneasy, spoke cautiously. Do you see the lights at night? A widow whispered to a friend. They move as if alive, and sometimes I hear children crying, but no one answers. Another voice shivered. I tried to follow the smoke from the chimneys, the smells, the cries. It is not natural, and yet we do nothing. Fear held them silent, allowing the Harper family's obsession with control and taboo to flourish unchecked. Inside the estate, Eleanor's diary revealed her cold rationale. The world fears what it does not understand. Secrecy is the guardian of devotion. The sins of others are but lessons we must endure to perfect the harvest. Servants overheard murmurs of rituals planned for generations, their faint echoes drifting through candle-lit halls. The metallic smell of iron, of blood, of wax burned into the walls, as if the house itself remembered. Courts were petitioned, but the Harper family's wealth and influence turned justice into theatre. Letters from the sheriff noted missing witnesses, coerced silence, and ambiguous testimony. "The Harper family is respected," one official wrote. "Any accusation requires proof, and proof is impossible when fear rules the halls." Survivors of the estate's rituals vanished, some escaping into the night, others swallowed into the shadows, leaving fragments of memory and whispers that would haunt the valley for decades. If you are horrified by this, remember, the most forbidden rituals are yet to be uncovered. Late one evening, a child's sob drifted across the estate. Chains rattled in the cellar, and the faint metallic scent of blood, mixed with decay, hung in the air. Letters, half burned and scattered across the village, told fragments of truth, but not the full story. And outside, the valley whispered again, warning that the Harper family's legacy of obsession, abuse, and taboo had been seen by men, feared by men, but never stopped by men. Decades later, long after the Harper family had vanished from public memory, the estate lay in ruin. Moss crawled up stone walls, wind moaned through shattered windows, and the metallic tang of forgotten blood lingered in the cellar. Archaeologists and historians arrived, drawn by rumors of the Harper legacy, unaware of the horrors still etched into the very foundations. Their boots echoed in corridors that once held screams, chains, and whispered prayers to devils only the Harpers understood. In the basement, they uncovered fragments of diaries, charred ledgers, and ritual objects, coated in rust and dried blood. One diary entry, smudged and brittle, revealed Eleanor's devotion to taboo. "The children bear the mark of faith, the servants the proof. Each life is a thread, woven into eternity by fear and obedience." The lead historian shivered, the smell of iron still clinging faintly to the stone, and whispered, "These rituals, they catalogued everything, every person, every child." Skeletal remains lined hidden chambers, carefully positioned, some showing signs of repeated abuse. One skeleton, smaller than the rest, was curled in a corner, hands crossed over the chest as if in prayer. The lead archaeologist lifted a fragment of a ledger. 76 names, each numbered, each tied to unspeakable acts. The metallic scent of iron clung to the paper, mingling with dust, decay, and the faint tang of old wax. Letters discovered in a hollowed beam spoke of cannibalistic feasts, slaves and children used in secret rituals, portions hidden for later ceremonies. One letter fragment read, "Only a taste ensures loyalty, only obedience preserves the harvest." The words hung in the air like a curse. Outside, the wind rattled broken shutters, carrying faint echoes of chants and laughter, remnants of a terror long past but never fully extinguished. Local legends returned to life. Villagers spoke of shadows moving under moonlight, whispers along the valley floor, and chains rattling in long-abandoned cellars. Some claimed to see the ghostly figures of children and slaves, forever bound by the Harper family's obsession. One diary entry described a ceremony in which siblings were forced into ritual unions to produce the next generation, a practice repeated for decades. The pages, damp and mouldy, seemed to weep iron-coloured stains. Artifacts revealed even deeper horrors. Ceremonial knives, bone fragments shaped into charms, and jars containing unidentifiable substances. Each object told a story of obsession, control, and the unrelenting reach of taboo. Testimonies recorded decades later from descendants of survivors recounted nightmares of chains, whispers, and touch that was neither loving nor protective. The air, they said, still carried the scent of iron and fear, as if the estate itself remembered. If this darkness disturbs you, know there is more yet to be revealed. A torn ledger page, discovered behind a loose stone, listed a missing child. Name erased, number smudged. No one could determine if the child had escaped, been consumed, or buried in secret. The valley seemed to hold its breath as shadows stretched across moss-covered stones. Whispers of the past intertwined with the wind, warning that the Harper legacy had left more secrets than anyone could count. Archaeologists left uneasy, their notebooks full, but questions unanswered. Long after the Harper estate crumbled into ruins, the valley whispered their legacy. Moss covered the stone walls, and wind moved through shattered windows, carrying faint echoes of chains and cries. The metallic tang of iron lingered, mixed with rotting leaves, as if the earth itself refused to forget. Locals still spoke in hushed tones of vanished children, ghostly figures, and lights flickering in the ruins on moonless nights. Archaeologists pieced together diaries, letters, and ledgers, uncovering the horrifying scope of the Harper family's obsession. 76 slaves catalogued, ritualized, and bred, siblings forced into unnatural unions, servants coerced into participating in ceremonies that twisted flesh and spirit alike. One fragment, nearly illegible, read, "The harvest is never complete. Fear nourishes it, blood consecrates it, and obedience sustains it." The words left a bitter tang in the mouths of those who read them. Descendants of survivors recounted nightmares that followed them into adulthood. Some claimed to see shadows in fields that once belonged to the estate, faint whispers counting names, rattling chains, and the ghostly scent of iron and wax. The valley, they said, seemed alive, remembering the rituals, the pain, and the acts the world refused to acknowledge. One old woman whispered, trembling, "How many more children never saw the sun? How many bones are still buried beneath the floors?" Artifacts revealed more than numbers could capture. Ceremonial knives, bone fragments shaped into charms, jars of unidentifiable substances. Each told a story of obsession, secrecy, and ritual, preserved in darkness. Researchers documented cannibalistic feasts, forbidden marriages, and psychological torment. Yet still, one mystery remained unsolved. A child, name erased from the ledger, whose fate no record could reveal. The air clung heavy with iron, wax, and the lingering weight of sin. The valley seemed to sigh. Local legends had transformed into warnings. The Harper ghosts haunted fields, streams, and ruins. Chains rattled in empty cellars. Shadows moved against crumbling walls, and faint laughter echoed where no living soul dared enter. Letters and diaries once hidden had surfaced, but their fragments left more questions than answers. Each sentence revealed devotion, madness, and fear woven into flesh and number. Do you believe these taboos were hidden or celebrated in secret? Comment your thoughts. A torn page, smudged with crimson ink, remained in the final ledger. It hinted at rituals yet to be completed, names uncounted, lives erased. The wind swept through the valley carrying whispers of obedience, fear, and devotion long past. No one could say if the Harper horrors had truly ended, or if they simply waited in shadows, buried beneath soil, stone, and silence. How many such forbidden secrets still lie buried where we refuse to look?